Altered Realities is the debut full-length album from Sovereign. This is an Oslo, Norway-based death thrash metal band, and in a fairly classic style with their own fairly unique twist upon it, which if you know these guys' history, it's kind of an interesting result to come from folks who've been involved with. I think Necromantian is that makes sense, but also one of the main guitarists has featured on the last several records from Nocturnal Breed. We've got folks from Dode Squad and the Consortium, which both have their own unique takes on different styles. And the first showings from this band definitely sounded like a starter group that was really interested in aggressive thrash metal. And I first pointed to Sacrifice and kind of the Possessed by Fire kind of sound, but by the time their 2019 demo had released, and as an EP in 2020, it was much more of a classic thrash metal influenced sound. And I would say what a lot of people ended up calling brutal thrash metal or death thrash metal, that blurred the lines where you're one step beyond like a Demolition Hammer into death metal, which is maybe like a Pestilence, early Pestilence, or maybe early 90s. Golem, or uh, Protector, or Aggressor, and those types of bands. But we have something a little bit different here on this release, where those things are all squarely there, but they've made it into their own kind of meandering, spaced out, almost progressive death thrash metal influenced thing, that it really blurs the lines between classic death thrash and that all-out riff attack, and the more thoughtful thinking man side of early progressive death metal. So we don't quite get the nerdy side of things, we don't quite get the entirely brutal side of things, but if you're a fan of like Obliteration or Sepulcher, you'll probably like what this first preview song sounds like. Now, if you're a huge fan of like the first Pestilence record or Sepultura's Arise, I think that you'll instinctually gravitate towards what Sovereign do. Although if you have the extra context of Coroner and Oblivion's first record from this day forward, you'll appreciate their different strokes that they add to this sound. And it's not all about brutality, the way that Tortured Existence or Dreaming with the Dead often jam into their hardest riffs. This band plays around that a little bit. They move into atmospheric territory as often as they hit you with a line of riffs. And the production values and their sort of voicing of the vocalist, again, that'll remind you of the most recent Necromantian record, or maybe even the most recent Obliteration record, in the sense that it has the same the drummer from Execration features here, so you get a sense that there's sort of a Norwegian death metal sound forming within all these collective efforts, but there's still a very classic touch to it that is a little bit weird. It's a little bit out there, but it's not so weird that you're not going to feel like this is anything but a riff album. When I say riff album, I mean that if you're obsessed with rhythm guitar, theatrics, and presentation, and the creativity that Riffcraft brings to thrash metal and death metal, and where they kind of converge in their sort of dual built evolutions over time unto about 1991, you'll appreciate the almost virtuosic touch that this album is approached in terms of its compositions and the way that the guitars are writ in not so much their intertwined abilities, but more how the whole thing works in a dynamic of aggression that is, murderous and frustrated and ripping as hard as it can, as well as the stuff that is thoughtful introspective and questioning of every turn that it takes. So that there's a real dynamic there. And I think that's kind of the key word to this album, is that there's a dynamism that they've developed, which is much more beyond their years as a band that's just been around since, about 2018 or 2019 or so. So this is a very mature result, and it's also one that is just a great listen. It's a 40-minute death thrash metal record that is just a pristine front to back. It's a brilliant full listen. I was completely obsessed with this record for the last month. It was actually hard. I even say in the review, it was hard to make my top 75 list this year because I was trying to listen to this record instead. I would rather have been sitting with this thing. So that's my endorsement there for that, is that this is just a very high standard and a very high recommendation. Um, if your taste is not so adventurous that you would know a band like Oblivion, I don't think this will quite cut in to your interests. But, if you're just a fan of old school Sepultura, you'll probably enjoy a lot of what this record does otherwise. And I mentioned a million other bands as well. So I feel like they've built something that is worth expanding upon here. And it's just in my favorite style. And it's just an early, quick rush into 2024 with this very much a standout record. So that releases on the 19th. Go ahead and check that out when it releases. There's a couple of songs here you can preview while you read the review. Check that out too, and let me know what you think about it.